Joining me now to talk more about this are WPBF 25 News exclusive political analysts Adam Hasner and Ron Klein. Gentlemen, thanks both for being here tonight. Adam, let me start with you. Is this possible that this indictment could be political gold for candidate Donald Trump in 2024 and even vault him further ahead in the race for the GOP nomination?
Yeah, well, putting all the weaponization of the justice system aside, you ask a great question, right? So I think in the short term, this is definitely going to energize Trump supporters and probably a lot of other people who see this as a terrible wrong. And it could have longer term positive impacts for Trump. But remember, the primary isn't until about 9-10 months away. So there's still a lot of time. There's also still a lot of other things that could happen that are being discussed out there in the legal system. But I think in the short term, with fundraising, with energy, with support, this could be really helpful to President Trump right now in the primary.
And we don't really know what the extent of these charges are and won't until he's actually arraigned in New York. But Ron, do you buy the idea that perhaps by claiming he's being persecuted, that this may actually re-energize the non-MAGA wing of the GOP to get into Trump's corner for 2024?
It's possible. I mean, I think we've all seen Donald Trump resurrect himself from lots of other things. This is just another one. He's obviously going to celebrate this and try to claim some big persecution issue. I mean, the reality is no man is above the law. This once again said it loud and clear, and that includes presidents. Set a really important precedent for future presidents as well.
Again, it is history making, the first time this has ever happened in the history of this country. Adam, on the flip side of this, is it possible that with an indictment, with details of these charges and perhaps these other even more serious cases that could result in indictments, could this put a cap on the number of Trump supporters there are that could limit him in trying to win either the primary eventually as well as a general election?
Well, I think Ron made a good point about this. There have been so many other instances where people thought that Donald Trump was just going to be disqualified, and I think you can't make that call right now. And I think in the short term, this looks so highly politicized to so many folks, both Trump supporters and others who perhaps aren't Trump supporters. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that think the Manhattan DA is being objective and that this isn't very political. And I think this has crossed the Rubicon to a point now where this could have real consequences in the future, not just for President Trump, but the weaponization of justice system all over. So,
and that is Adam, excuse me, that is the narrative, Ron. Is it effective in the long term, and could it even blunt the impact of any other possible indictments that may come from either the special counsel or in the state of Georgia?
Well, first of all, this concept of weaponization of the justice system, give me a break. He broke the law, and that's what's going to be proven. I mean, it's up to the grand jury, and they went forward and made the case, and now it's going to go through the justice system. Whether a jury will convict him or not is really up to the case that's presented. But this is probably one of a number of things that are going to come forward. And the other ones may be even more serious. Breaking the law is breaking the law. Those are felonies. Breaking the law in terms of possibly leading up to the insurrection and incentivizing it, that's a potential issue. And certainly what's happened in Georgia, in his own voice on the phone saying, I need these votes, find them for me. I mean, that's breaking the law. Anybody in the United States will understand that. So in the long term, I think this could be harmful to him. Whether it's going to affect his political trajectory, I don't know.
One more question. It's a political one. What do you make of the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, saying that the state will not aid in any extradition, if it becomes necessary, of Donald Trump? Is that an appeal to possible Trump voters, Adam?
Well, I think the governor has certainly been criticized for how he's handled it. I think he handled it right tonight. And he's also showing that he wants to make sure that there's an honest and fair judicial system, and he's not going to partake in what has certainly makes a lot of people shake their heads and think that we've really gone into uncharted territory here.
Ron, obviously there is actually very little chance that an extradition would become necessary, but what do you make of this statement by the governor?
Well, I don't think it's the right thing to do. Personally, I think the governor has the right and obligation to follow the law. Governor DeSantis likes to hold himself out as that type of person, and this would be inconsistent with holding out and enforcing the law. I think in general, this whole thing with Governor DeSantis positioning is he's obviously trying to get into the MAGA backyard here if something happens to Donald Trump, and obviously not torpedoing that opportunity is really what's going on here.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both for your expertise and insight tonight. Adam Haster, Ron Klein, our exclusive WPBF 25 political analysts. Thanks again, gentlemen.